All right, let's just start off with give me the lay of the land. Where do you think the race is in Pennsylvania right now?
Sure. It's for your viewers. It's been a 1 point race twice. 2016, President Trump was successful by a point. 2020, President Biden won by a point. I think we all went into it expecting it to be razor close. It is. So I've been talking about incremental movement. You would have to be not in Pennsylvania, but in Mars to not realize that there's been incremental movement the last 2 weeks towards President Trump. So as we sit here with less than 2 weeks to go, I'd rather be President Trump than Vice President Harris for many reasons, but because I think the momentum is moving in his direction, and I think you can sense that on the ground, and you can sense it in the way they behave when they're here.
All right, so let's start with the pro-Trump stuff. Why is the momentum with Trump?
I think for a few reasons. One is at the end of the day, his message is focused on what most people are honestly talking about at their kitchen table: the economy, crime, illegal immigration, and the fact that the world seems chaotic and unsafe. That's the things that he's been talking about, and that's where he was successful. I think also is he's playing in each area of the state. He's campaigning in Philadelphia. He's meeting with African American and Hispanic voters. He just held a town hall a few miles from me in Montgomery County, which is one of the Democratic bastions. And he and J.D. Vance have been in rural Pennsylvania. So you see him in city, suburb, and rural, whereas it appears to me that Vice President Harris is putting all of her eggs in the suburban Philadelphia vote. It's where she keeps doing these quote unquote town halls that really aren't town halls. The last one yesterday is about 2 miles from my house. So I think you see that one, President Trump's message is the message we talk about at our kitchen tables. But two is he's campaigning everywhere, and she's putting all of her hope in suburban voters. And I just don't know there's enough there for her to move.
Okay, so let's flip the coin then. What is she doing that is not working for her in Pennsylvania?
I think two things. One is she's taking the African American vote in Philadelphia for granted. She's rarely been there. And candidly, something that's more, your wheelhouse of expertise is that she hasn't agreed on a message. I mean, on the one hand, either it's that Bidenomics is working, which clearly no one in Philadelphia believes, or that she now gets it because she's a middle class, grew up in a middle class family. So one, she hasn't spent enough time in Philadelphia. She hasn't walked the neighborhoods. She hasn't been seen there, and her message is off. And the second is, I think the selection of Walz was a huge error, not only because she passed on Governor Shapiro, but also I think their theory was you'd send Walz out to Western blue collar Pennsylvania, and the guy in the flannel suit that can't load a shotgun is clearly doesn't sell there. So, she's putting all her eggs in the suburbs, has no enthusiasm in the city. And if Walz was going to help her with rural blue collar voters, that's been a fail. Despite we're a 50-50 state, she spent $1 billion. It's a horse race, but I think President Trump is a nose ahead.
Yeah, I love the. I mean, the Walz thing, dude. I love the fact that guy goes out hunting. He looks like he swung by a Bass Pro Shop on the way out, and they handed him a gun. It's like if you're going to tell people I drive around with a gun in my truck all the time, and then you can't load it, you look like a moron.
Yeah,
And
I mean, something.
it's like he wanted to dress up as a man for Halloween.
Yeah, I mean, you have the feeling that, if you were there and you were directing that moment with, you imagine that at the last second you were yelling to an intern, cut off the tags, because the tags were.
That's actually the best. I may steal that from you, Guy. I love that. I really did. I was trying to figure out what I was missing about that moment, and you just put your finger on it better than anybody I've ever heard. It's literally, it's Dukakis in the tank, but it's like literally they ran out of Bass Pro Shops. Like, put this on. Here we got a reflective vest.
Right. No, I appreciate the compliment, but really what comes across there is that neither of Walz or Harris are authentic.
Right.
Right. I mean, at the end of the day, goes back to, one of the things, right or wrong, about even President Bush, but you had the sense that he was comfortable in who he was. Candidates that are comfortable are relatable. I mean, President Trump doesn't go into Western Pennsylvania or Appalachia and say, gee, I know what it's like not to know if you can pay the bills. but you know that there's an authenticity when you talk to him eye to eye and say, I have a hard time doing that. He knows that because he's had people working for him. He's been out and about. He meets with real people. Whereas with her, everything is contrived, and then this guy, is going to retell us what a man is by. Look, I don't know who Tim Walz really is. Frankly, I don't know that Tim Walz really knows who he is, but Tim ought to just be comfortable in who he is, and Vice President Harris. But there's 13 days to go. It's too late for them to reintroduce themselves, so they have to carry on these characters they've portrayed.
You mentioned your governor, Josh Shapiro. There is a theory, which I am a somewhat subscriber to. I'm getting closer and closer to it, that Shapiro really doesn't want her to win because he wants to run himself. And that if she loses, he can say, I could win Pennsylvania, choose me. If she wins, he's pretty much done because by the time there's a free shot at running again, it's going to be too late.
Well, when I talk about it in the Philadelphia market or across the state, I say he probably does not want to cast his ballot for president with the television cameras watching. I'm not sure which oval he's going to fill in. And look at what he's doing.
So it's real.
Oh, I think it's palpable. And here's the thing. Think back, and again, with your expertise in this, think about the things he's doing. He's helping the team, but he's going to rallies. He's helping the team, but he's going on Face the Nation and This Week. And he's doing things for the ticket, which are as helpful, if not more helpful to him. So he's checking the box. Meanwhile, I will tell you as a Pennsylvanian, folks across the country can do it, but it shows up in my Facebook and Twitter. The guy is nonstop about abortion, and we're not going back, and protecting everybody's right to vote. So even his gubernatorial messages to his followers, which he's gaining nationally, are about abortion and voting rights. I mean, this is a guy who's laying the groundwork for a future run, and he gets the benefit. Sure, go to a rally for the Democratic ticket. Go on Meet the Press and answer some questions. You're helping the cause, but I think he's helping himself more than anything else. It probably will shed a few crocodile tears if it goes the way we'd like election night.
So let me just ask you this, because there's a lot of people, if he had been named to the ticket, would he have carried Pennsylvania?
I don't know, because at the end of the day, the top of the ticket matters. But in a state where it's 1 point, I'm glad she didn't. Look, Sean, I was one of the few people from the beginning when I spoke to audiences or spoke to the media here in Pennsylvania, or even national folks calling in. Back in July, I said, look, for the National Democratic Party, I understand the Biden to Harris switch. Of all the 50 states, the one state where that was a disastrous idea was here, Pennsylvania, a critically close state. We lost Scranton Joe. And in the Philadelphia region, I will tell you that, everybody, all the Democrats in the Philadelphia region, going back to the 80s, called Joe Biden our third U.S. senator. And so you take out Scranton Joe, Philadelphia Joe, and you replace him with San Francisco Kamala in a state they only carried by a point. She needed Shapiro or somebody else to help, and Walz is a swing and a miss.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. So Biden really, that Scranton Joe thing sold, right? I mean, I don't know if it's worth 50,000 or 100,000 votes, but it was a net positive in Pennsylvania.
Sure. And in the suburbs of Philadelphia, again, he's been on our television since the 80s as a president. And here's the other thing. When those of us on the conservative side were concerned that the Democratic Party was lurching left, a lot of things that you could say on behalf of President Trump in North Carolina or Georgia or Michigan, you couldn't really say effectively in Pennsylvania, because nobody in the Philadelphia media market, nobody in the Lehigh Valley, Allentown, believed, I don't say nobody, but far less people believing, you say, Joe Biden's becoming a captive of the left. We've been seeing him on television for 4 decades. He's been to the Eagles games. He's been to the Phillies games. It is not a hard sell to say that Kamala Harris is a captive of the left. And again, in a state where 1 point moves, it was a very risky proposition. And I think losing Biden, running with her, swing and miss with Walz, no connection in Philadelphia with black and Hispanic voters. Again, I'd sooner be Trump than Harris, but it's still a razor close state. But right now, as we say, if the election were held today, and we do have early voting going on, I'd rather be President Trump because I think that's where the majority is going to land.
So what do you make? I had Seth Keshel on my show last night talking about registration in Pennsylvania. I've talked to Scott Pressler about registration in Pennsylvania. What is the trend that you see in terms of, like, should we? I believe that based on the registration numbers and some of the early vote numbers, I'm very bullish on that. What does the data suggest to you?
Yeah. So in 2020, which was a different time, a very different time, but in 2020, Joe Biden was ahead in Pennsylvania, 1.4 million votes before the polls opened because of mail-in voting. President Trump won Election Day by 1.3 million. It wasn't enough. So the Republicans finally got in the game. So we looked at that two things. One is, how do you close a 1.4 million gap? And two, the ratio was about 5-1, meaning for every Republican who voted by mail, there were 5 Democrats. As of close of business Friday, the gap is only about 300,000 pro-Democrat, and the ratio is about 3-1, just under 3-1. If this continues through Election Day, and the gap is only 300,000 or 400,000, even 500,000, and the ratio stays at 3-1, this is a horse race. This is a horse race because they need it. The way they've won the 100-yard dash in Pennsylvania, the way they've won the 100-yard dash is to start out at the 80-yard line. If they're only at the 50, we can beat them. We can beat them. So I don't know what else this tells us. But again, the data is there and the registration numbers are encouraging. Look, people are identifying with their team more and more. But again, the gap used to be 1 million. It now is at 290,000, moving towards Republican. It's a seismic shift. But again, it's still 50-50. They're outspending us. She's on my phone. She's on Hulu. She's everywhere. And the walkers walk my streets. They now skip it because we have lawn signs for Trump and McCormack. But, the Democrats have more money and resources, which is what's keeping the game. They may overperform, but the number of people who want President Trump is larger than the number of people who want Harris.
You mentioned you have a McCormack sign in your lawn there. That big Senate race, incumbent Democratic Bob Casey versus Dave McCormack, West Point grad. He just put up his closing ad this weekend, standing there in front of iconic West Point, talking about values and how 18 years later, Bob Casey hasn't accomplished anything. Where do you think the Senate race ends up?
Oh, I have felt optimistic for Dave McCormack for a long time. Bob Casey, the last time he held a private sector job, Bill Clinton was in the White House. Literally. He's not only been our senator for 18 years, but prior to that, he was state treasurer and state auditor. He has not held a private sector job since Bill Clinton was in the White House. He's been in the Senate 18 years. In his ads and in the debates, he never once said, I helped pass this bill or I saved this project and life in this community is better. It has all been about attacking Dave, which told me from the get-go they were in trouble. Here's the other reason, is that, again, you understand this. Bob Casey's he's from a family where his dad was governor. Casey's have held elected office in this state since the 80s, almost without interruption. He has never broken 50%, even when he was ahead, and we're now seeing it. My point is this, again, you understand. If you've been in elective office for 3 decades, and your family's been in office for 5 decades, if you can't get to 50% by now, you ain't ever going to get to 50%. If you haven't made your sale by now, you're not going to make it. And here's the last point. If your audience doesn't believe any of the data I said, here's this. Starting last week, Bob Casey ran ads saying how he agrees with President Trump on the border wall, and he showed pictures of President Trump. So all of a sudden, President Trump is not this serious threat to democracy. He's somebody to hug. That tells you everything you need to know. Senator Casey's in trouble. He is so desperate that now he's hugging President Trump, trying to get his coattails.
I'm so glad you brought that up. That's four Senate candidates all
Right.
three blue wall Dems and John Tester out there in Montana are all now talking about working with President Trump. I mean, it's amazing. I like the way you framed it, though. If he's such a threat, why are you so proud of the work you did with him? Guy Ciarrocchi, thank you for being with us. Pennsylvania, obviously critical, 19 electoral votes. I think whoever wins Pennsylvania, I think Trump wins big, but if you win Pennsylvania, it's over. Last question, real quick. How soon will we know who wins Pennsylvania?
I don't know. It may take us at least until the following week.
Oh,
Yeah.
but
Well,
if we win, how so we could run up the score then, right?
right. Yes. Well, we by the time we do mail-ins and by the time we allow for overseas ballot, now your viewers can help. I mean, if we win this by six figures, if President Trump's ahead by over 100,000, then all of this, counting mail-ins and provisionals and overseas, it doesn't matter. If this is over 100,000 or under 50,000, it will be the following week.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.